The grand ballroom of Victor Langston's Silicon Valley mansion glittered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across the faces of tech moguls, venture capitalists, and celebrities sipping vintage champagne. Victor, the CEO of Nexus Tech, stood at the center, his tailored suit sharper than his smile. Tonight was his annual gala, but the real entertainment wasn't the string quartet or the caviar. It was the chessboard. Victor loved games, especially ones where he could flex his intellect. His guests expected a spectacle, and he had a surprise in mind. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming, "tonight, I challenge someone unexpected to a chess match." The crowd murmured, intrigued. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Camille R. Bennett, the housekeeper quietly refilling a tray of flutes. "Camille," he called, his tone laced with mockery. "Why don't you join me? Let's see if you can keep up." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Camille froze, her dark eyes meeting his. She was 32, with a polite smile that hid years of grit. To the guests, she was invisible, a background figure in a crisp black uniform. But Victor's grin faltered when she set down the tray and walked toward the chessboard. "Why not?" she said softly, her voice steady. The room hushed. Victor's confidence wavered for a split second. Had he miscalculated? As Camille sat across from him, the board between them, the stakes felt higher than a simple game. What had he just unleashed? The chessboard gleamed under the chandelier's light, each piece a soldier in Victor's plan to humiliate Camille. He opened with the king's gambit, a bold move to assert dominance. "Your turn, Camille," he said, leaning back with a smirk. The guests watched, some whispering bets on how quickly she'd crumble. Camille studied the board, her fingers hovering over a pawn. Her silence unnerved Victor. He expected hesitation, maybe a nervous giggle. Instead, she moved her pawn to e4, mirroring his aggression. The crowd gasped softly. Had she just countered his gambit? Victor's jaw tightened. "Interesting," he muttered, pushing a knight forward. As the game progressed, Camille's moves were deliberate, almost surgical. She didn't rush or flinch under the crowd's scrutiny. Victor, however, began to sweat. He'd underestimated her, assuming her role as a housekeeper meant she lacked intellect. But her eyes, focused, unyielding, told a different story. Flashbacks flickered in Camille's mind. Late nights studying chess in a cramped apartment, her father teaching her strategies before he passed. Chess was her escape from a world that overlooked her. Now it was her weapon. She sacrificed a bishop, baiting Victor into a trap. He took it, grinning triumphantly. "Got you," he said, but Camille's lips curved slightly. "Did you?" she whispered. The board was shifting in her favor, and Victor didn't see it yet. The crowd leaned closer, sensing something extraordinary unfolding. The atmosphere in the ballroom thickened with tension. Victor's knight captured Camille's bishop, and he leaned back, expecting applause. But the crowd's whispers grew louder, not in his favor. "She's holding her own," a venture capitalist murmured. "Who is she?" asked another. Victor's smile strained as he glanced at Camille, who sat composed, her hands folded calmly. Camille's next move, a rook to an open file, sent a ripple of shock through the room. It wasn't just defensive, it was a declaration of intent. Victor's confidence cracked. He pushed a pawn aggressively, tried to regain control, but his hand trembled slightly. Why was this housekeeper making him nervous? Camille's mind raced. She remembered the countless times she'd been dismissed by employers, by society, by people like Victor who saw her uniform and assumed her worth. Tonight, she wasn't just playing chess, she was rewriting their assumptions. Her queen slid diagonally, pinning Victor's knight. The crowd gasped audibly now. Victor scoffed, masking his unease. "Lucky move," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He countered, but his position weakened. Camille's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw not a housekeeper, but a strategist. The game was no longer a joke, it was a battle, and he was losing ground. As Camille reached for her next piece, a guest glass shattered on the floor, breaking the silence. All eyes turned to the chessboard. What would she do next? The shattered glass echoed in the ballroom, but Camille didn't flinch. Her focus was razor-sharp as she moved her knight, forking Victor's rook and king. The crowd erupted in murmurs. "Check," she said softly, her voice cutting through the noise. Victor's face paled. He had to move his king, losing his rook in the process. "How was she doing this?" a guest whispered. Victor's ego screamed for a comeback. He scanned the board, desperate for a counterattack, but Camille's pieces were everywhere, closing in like a noose. He moved his queen, hoping to intimidate her, but Camille didn't blink. She captured his rook, her expression unreadable. Flashbacks hit Victor now, his rise to power, stepping over anyone who dared challenge him. He'd never lost publicly. Losing to Camille, a housekeeper, was unthinkable. "You're good," he said, forcing a laugh. "But I'm better." He pushed a bishop forward, aiming to disrupt her rhythm. Camille paused, her fingers tracing the edge of the board. The crowd held its breath. Then she smiled, a small, dangerous smile, and moved her queen to the center. "Check again," she said. Victor's stomach dropped. He was running out of moves, and the crowd was no longer on his side. Was this how it felt to be cornered? The tension was palpable. Camille leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on his. "Your move, Mr. Langston," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried a quiet strength that made the room feel small. Victor stared at the board, his king hemmed in by Camille's relentless attack. The crowd's whispers were now a roar of excitement. "She's brilliant," someone exclaimed. Victor's allies shifted uncomfortably, their loyalty wavering. He moved his king to a safer square, but it cost him his queen. Camille took it without hesitation. "Check," she said again. Her voice was steady. Victor's hands clenched into fists. He was a titan of industry. How could he be losing to her? He glanced at the guests, expecting sympathy, but found none. Even his COO, Clara, was a longtime confidant. She watched with a raised eyebrow, intrigued by Camille. Camille's mind was a battlefield of strategy. She'd learned chess in a world that didn't care about her dreams, honing her mind in the shadows. Now, those shadows were her strength. She moved a pawn, seemingly innocuous, but it opened a lethal diagonal for her bishop. Victor didn't see it yet. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Victor snapped, his composure cracking. Camille met his gaze. "I'm just playing the game, sir," she replied, her tone polite but piercing. The crowd leaned in, sensing blood in the water. Victor's next move was hasty, a desperate attempt to counterattack. It was exactly what Camille wanted. As she reached for her bishop, the room seemed to hold its breath. Was this the moment she'd end him? Camille's bishop slid to G7, pinning Victor's king against the board's edge. "Check," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. The crowd gasped, some standing to get a better view. Victor's eyes darted across the board, searching for an escape. There was none. His king had one legal move, but it would only delay the inevitable. He moved his king, his face flushed with fury. "You think you've won?" he hissed, low enough for only Camille to hear. She didn't respond, her focus on the board. Then, in a move that stunned the room, she sacrificed her queen, placing it directly in Victor's path. He took it greedily, thinking he'd turn the tide. But it was a trap. Camille's rook swooped in, aligning with her bishop. "Checkmate," she said softly. The room exploded in applause. Victor stared at the board, disbelieving. He'd been outplayed by a housekeeper. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice breaking. Camille stood, her posture dignified. "I'm Camille Bennett," she said simply. But a guest, an older man in the back, gasped. "Camille Bennett?" he said. "The prodigy from Oakland? You were a chess champion at 16. The crowd turned to her, stunned. Camille's past unraveled in whispers. A scholarship lost to family tragedy. Years of working to survive, her brilliance buried under necessity. Victor's face burned with shame. He'd mocked a genius. The applause faded, leaving a heavy silence. Victor stood, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "A fluke," he muttered, but no one believed him. The guests' eyes were on Camille, who remained composed, her victory quiet but undeniable. Victor's humiliation was public, and it stung. Clara, his COO, approached Camille. "That was extraordinary," she said. offering a handshake. "We need to talk." Camille nodded, but her eyes flicked to Victor, who stormed toward the bar, barking orders at a waiter. His ego was wounded, but his mind was already scheming. Later, in a mansion study, Victor met with his inner circle. "She's a nobody," he spat. "Find out everything about her. I want leverage." His team hesitated. Camille's performance had earned her respect, but Victor's glare silenced them. He wouldn't let a housekeeper upstage him. Meanwhile, Camille slipped into the kitchen, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline had faded. She'd exposed her past, her pain, to a room of strangers. Her phone buzzed. A text from her younger sister, Lila, heard about the game. "You're amazing." Camille smiled, but worry crept in. Victor wasn't the type to lose gracefully. As she left the mansion, a shadowy figure watched from a car across the street. Victor's orders were already in motion. What did he have planned? The next morning, Camille woke to a flood of notifications. Her chess match had gone viral on X, with clips of her checkmate racking up millions of views. "Housekeeper humiliates tech CEO" trended worldwide. Strangers praised her, but the attention felt like a spotlight she hadn't asked for. At her small apartment, Camille sipped coffee, trying to focus on her sister's college applications. But a knock at the door startled her. It was Clara, Victor's COO, with an offer, a job at Nexus Tech as a strategic analyst. "Your mind is wasted cleaning houses," Clara said. Camille hesitated. Could she trust anyone from Victor's world? Meanwhile, Victor's team dug into Camille's past. They uncovered her old chess records, her father's debts, and Lila's medical bills from a childhood illness. Victor grinned at the report. "Perfect," he said. "Leak it. Let the world see her as a sob story, not a hero." He wanted to tarnish her victory, to regain control of the narrative. By noon, tabloids ran headlines. Chess prodigy's tragic fall. Camille's phone buzzed with messages from friends, horrified by the invasion of her privacy. She felt exposed, violated. But then she saw a post on X from Victor himself. "Camille played well, but let's not romanticize her story. She's no saint." Anger surged through her. Victor wasn't just humiliated, he was dangerous. What would he do next? Camille sat at her kitchen table, staring at Victor's post. The world was dissecting her life, twisting her struggles into pity porn. Lila hugged her, tears in her eyes. "You don't deserve this," she said. Camille squeezed her hand. "Neither do you," she replied. She wouldn't let Victor win. Not again. She accepted Clara's job offer, not for the money, but for access. Nexus Tech was Victor's kingdom, and she'd play her next moves from inside. On her first day, colleagues whispered, some in awe, others skeptical. Camille ignored them, focusing on her role, analyzing market trends. But she also studied Victor's empire, noting its weaknesses. Victor, meanwhile, planned his next strike. He invited Camille to a company summit, framing it as a peace offering. In reality, he'd rigged a panel discussion to grill her publicly, hoping to expose her as a fraud. "She's a one-trick pony," he told his team. "I'll prove it." At the summit, Camille took the stage, facing a panel of industry experts. The question started innocently, but grew hostile. "How can a housekeeper understand tech markets?" one asked. The audience snickered, but Camille was ready. She dismantled their arguments with data, her voice calm, but commanding. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Victor, watching from the wings, clenched his fists. She'd outmaneuvered him again, but he had one last card to play. Victor's final plan was ruthless. Frame Camille for leaking Nexus Tech's trade secrets. He'd planted false evidence in her work files, ready to discover it during an audit. The scandal would ruin her career and credibility. "She'll wish she'd stayed invisible," he told his team. Camille sensed the trap. Late nights at Nexus Tech, she noticed files on her computer she hadn't touched. Her chess-honed instincts screamed danger. She confided in Clara, who was skeptical but agreed to investigate. Together, they uncovered Victor's digital fingerprints in the tampered files. The audit loomed, and Victor called a company-wide meeting to announce it. Camille sat in the back, her heart pounding. As Victor spoke, Clara slipped her a USB drive with proof of his sabotage. Use it wisely, she whispered. Camille nodded, her mind racing through strategies. When Victor accused her of the leak, the room gasped. He presented the doctored files, his voice dripping with false regret. I trusted you, Camille, he said. The crowd turned to her, waiting for her to crumble. But Camille stood, holding the USB drive. I have something to share, she said, her voice steady. The projector flickered on, revealing Victor's emails ordering the frame-up. The room erupted in shock. Victor's face drained of color. He'd been checkmated again. The meeting room was chaos. Victor stammered, trying to deflect, but the evidence was undeniable. Shareholders demanded answers, and Clara stepped forward, confirming Camille's innocence. Victor's actions are unacceptable, she said. The board called an emergency vote, and by evening, Victor was ousted as CEO. Camille left the building, the weight of the day heavy on her shoulders. Reporters swarmed, but she slipped away, needing quiet. At home, Lila hugged her tightly. You did it, she said. Camille smiled, but victory felt bittersweet. She'd won, but at what cost? Victor, meanwhile, retreated to his mansion, his empire crumbling. Alone, he stared at the chessboard from that fateful night. For the first time, he saw his arrogance, his need to dominate. But change? That was harder to face. Camille's story spread, inspiring millions. She was offered speaking engagements, book deals, and a scholarship fund for Lila. But she stayed grounded, taking a leadership role at Nexus Tech under Clara's mentorship. Her quiet strength reshaped the company's culture, proving intellect and integrity could outshine ego. One night, Camille visited her father's grave, placing a chess pawn beside it. I kept playing, Dad, she whispered. The stars above seemed to nod in approval. Months later, Camille stood at a community center in Oakland, launching a chess program for underserved youth. The room was packed with kids, their eyes bright with possibility. Chess teaches you to see 10 moves ahead, she told them, not just on the board, but in life. The crowd cheered, and Lila beamed from the front row. Camille's journey had transformed her. She wasn't just a prodigy or a viral sensation. She was a beacon of resilience. Nexus Tech thrived under her influence, and Clara became CEO, mentoring Camille as a future leader. The world saw her now, not as a housekeeper, but as a force. Victor, meanwhile, faded from the spotlight. He sold his mansion, grappling with his fall. One day, he mailed Camille a letter. I was wrong. You taught me more than I deserved. She read it, then set aside. His redemption was his own to earn. The story of Camille R. Bennett became a legend, a reminder that strength doesn't shout, it strategizes. Her legacy wasn't just winning a game. It was showing the world that the overlooked can change everything. Thank you for joining Camille's journey. Her story reminds us to look beyond labels and see the brilliance in everyone. Who in your life might be 10 moves ahead, waiting for their moment? Share their stories in the comments, and let's inspire each other to play our best moves in life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories of unsung heroes. Until next time, stay strategic, stay kind, and keep moving forward.